sector. So there are some projections based on the recent study by Javoxson, who has projected like by 2050 we will be having 100% biofuel utilization. So this is just an projection, and as per the Indian scenario, so there has been recently development in the biofuel sector related to the national policy on biofuel, which was published in 2018. So as per the policy,
பரிவாரத்துக்குள்ள இந்த அது black வேற ஏதாவது கலரா இருந்தா கூட கண்டுபிடிக்கிறது ஈஸியா கண்டுபிடிச்சு
hello participant, please
mute
unmute
themselves.
yourself.
தேவையே இல்லை. அந்த கியூக்குள்ள டாட் இருக்குன்னு எப்படி தெரியும்? நமக்கு இவ்வளவு தூரம் இதுக்குள்ள கேமரா இருக்கு தெரிஞ்சே நம்மளால கண்டுபிடிக்க முடியல.
Yes, Dr. Sanjeev, you can continue. I muted the person.
So as per the policy on biofuel, national policy on biofuel, so it is proposed that by 2030 there will be 20% blending of bioethanol in the petrol, and at least 5% blending of biodiesel in the diesel, which we use in the different engines. And there has been development in terms of specification, like BIS given some standard for biodiesel. So this B100 is the 100% utilization of biodiesel in some kind of engines, and there are different standards like B5, B16. So the numerical value stand for the amount or the percentage of the biodiesel which is being mixed with the conventional fuel. So there are growing sectors in the bioenergy which will develop very soon in the near future. So when we talk about the biofuel, we should know about the biomass resources. So like agro residue is a potential bioresource which is being waste, as you can see in the form of stubble burning in the agriculture field, and due to the several other reasons, like in the hilly areas there is a forest fire. And majorly when we talk about the feedstock for bioenergy or biofuel production, this include the agriculture residue, which are very common, the algae, which is growing very fast, and there are crops which are dedicated to energy like switchgrass, and the forest residue, agriculture municipal waste, and the animal waste, and the sludge from the industrial treatment plants can be used as a feedstock for biofuel production. So when we are focusing on the agro residue as well as the other waste product from the human like industry or the municipal sector, so we are doing two tasks together. We are extracting the energy from the biomass or the waste, and at the same time we are managing the waste in a proper way. So this is the major advantage of the biofuel, because while doing the extraction of energy, you can manage the waste generated through the industry as well as the human being. So bioenergy, basically it's an energy which is derived from any kind of biodegradable material, either it's a biomass or the waste material which contain a significant amount of the organic carbon for its conversion to biofuel. So there are few feedstock which I have listed here, and the conversion which have been in the based on the amount of fuel, you can opt any kind of the conversion technology to convert the provided biomass or the waste material into the desired biofuel. So little bit more about the this one, the thermal conversion, because I will be talking mostly about the biochemical conversion. So I plan to have some brief idea of the thermochemical conversion, so that I can skip this topic because Professor Pratham will take this in more detail. So I'll briefly explain that the thermal conversion include the direct combustion. Means like we are burning the agro residue in the cook stove, etc., and we are directly converting the biomass into heat energy. And the incineration, which is also a thermal conversion, and which includes the controlled burning of biomass in presence of oxygen. So again, in both these two cases, the oxygen will be present, but in the incineration, it will be under the control environment. Okay, and when we talk about the thermochemical conversion, so these are the thermochemical conversion, which include the thermal conversion as well as use of some chemicals like catalyst. So there are different kind of thermochemical conversion for conversion of biomass into a range of biofuel and the products. Like torrefication is the process which occurs around at 200 to 300 degrees centigrade with some main features, and the main product in the torrefication is the biochar. Similar to the torrefication, there is a fast pyrolysis, which again occur at 400 to 600 degrees centigrade and at very high heating rate, around 200 to 250 degrees centigrade per minute. And the main product in the fast pyrolysis is the bio oil, having the fuel value. And the slow pyrolysis, another variant of the pyrolysis is the slow pyrolysis, which occurs at 400 to 600 degrees centigrade, but the heating rate is low when we compare with the fast pyrolysis. And in this particular case, when we are doing the slow pyrolysis, the main product will be the biochar. Though there will be some amount of bio oil which will be produced, but the mainly around 80 or 85% will be the biochar. And the next one is the gasification, which is the combustion of biomass into gases. And the main product will be the syngas, which are having the fuel value. And usually the people get confused with the torrefication and the slow pyrolysis. The only difference between these two, slow pyrolysis and torrefication, is that the operating temperature. In case of the torrefication, the temperature is lower, around 200 to 300 degrees centigrade, whereas in case of pyrolysis is around 400 to 600 degrees centigrade. So this is about the thermochemical and thermal conversion of biomass. So now we'll talk about the biochemical conversion. So these are the yields of different processes like liquid, which is bio oil, char, and gases, which are generated through the thermochemical conversions. And some main features like operating temperature, residence time, and the oxygen requirement. In two, combustion and gasification, the combustion will require the most of the time the oxygen is required, whereas in the gasification, partial oxygen is required. And for other thermochemical conversion, which include the pyrolysis and torrefication, no oxygen is required. Yeah, so when we talk about the biochemical routes for the conversion of biomass into biofuel, so there has been systematic development in the sector of biofuel production. So there has been first generation biofuel, which include the bioethanol production from the sugarcane and corn liquor. And the second generation biofuel include the utilization of lignocellulosic biomass and the waste vegetable and crop oil for the production of ethanol and biodiesel. Third generation include mainly the algal biomass for the production of biofuel. And fourth generation, this is little bit more advanced, in which we are using the genetic engineering to manipulate the feedstock just to improve the composition or to improve the yield of the biofuel. The genetic engineering is applied. So these are considered as fourth generation, which are under development. And all these processes have some limitation, like when we talk about the first generation, there is a competition between food and food. And for the second generation, pre-treatment is a major issue, as well as for second and third generation face the scale up issues. And for the fourth generation fuel, the success rate is not yet established. So there is a more need of research in this particular fourth generation biofuels. So these two are currently in research phase, third generation as well as fourth generation. So when we talk about the biofuel and the biomass feedstock, we should talk about the lignocellulosic biomass, which includes different components like sugar, starch, and cellulose. So there are some feedstock which are rich in sugar, like root crop and salt crop, and there are some cereals and root crop which contains significant amount of starch, and there are several residues from the agriculture and the forest which include cellulose. So these all biomass contains energy value. So it's a prerequisite to utilize these biomass for production of desired biofuel. So some more fact about the biofuel: it's a most abundant material on the earth, around 73.9 ton per year in the world, and it's mainly composed of cellulose, hemicellulose, and lignin. So the major component of some of the common feedstock are listed here, like hardwood stem, which will contain around 40 to 55% cellulose, 24 to 40% hemicellulose, and some amount of lignin. So there are some other kind like softwood stem, leaves, switchgrass, pulp and paper, etc. So the leaves will be having the highest lignocellulosic hemicellulose. So you can see here. Uh, So lignin component is higher in case of leaves, whereas cellulose is high in case of wood material. And when we talk about this component, we should know the chemical composition. Cellulose is a polymer of the glucose, whereas lignin also contain glucose apart from these aromatic compound. And the hemicellulose, when we compare with the cellulose, it's having the branches, whereas the cellulose is a linear chain. The hemicellulose will be having the branching of the glucose and sugar molecule within the polymer itself. Yeah, so because of these material which are present, or the component which are present in the biomass, like lignocellulose and cellulose, so the main substrate for the biofuel conversion, for example, glucose, is not accessible directly. So that's why there is a need of pre-treatment by which the desired substrate is available for further processing. So pre-treatment is very much required in the case when you are focusing on the biofuel to bioenergy generation. Sorry, biomass to bioenergy generation. So pre-treatment is something which ultimately solubilize the rigid structure of the biomass into a smaller component, which will taken up further for the production of desired biofuel. So this step is known as the pre-treatment. So pre-treatment is done to destroy or to the polymer method and biological method. And the ultimate aim of the pre-treatment is just to break down the macromolecule into a smaller molecule, so that the smaller molecule can be utilized for the production of biofuel. Like here it is shown that the biomass is composed of lignin, cellulose, and hemicellulose. And after the pre-treatment, it can be any kind of pre-treatment. These can be broken down into smaller fragments, which can further be broken down in second stage of pre-treatment and can be converted into biofuel. So talking about the pre-treatment methods, there are physical pre-treatment, chemical pre-treatment, and biological or biochemical pre-treatment methods. So all these methods having some advantages and some disadvantages. For example, when we talk about the physical methods, so these are very good in terms of pre-treatment efficiency, but the capital investment is very high. Chemical pretreatment also moderate in terms of solubilizing the different component in the biomass, but the problem is that you have to add some external chemical in the reaction vessel, so it will contaminate the final product. Okay, and when we talk about the biological pretreatment, these are eco-friendly treatment, and there is a little cost involved in this compared to the chemical and physical methods. But the problem is that the rate of biochemical treatment is relatively lower. So sometimes you may have to incubate the sample for 2 days, 3 days, and subsequently up to 5 days, depending upon the type of bioagent which you are using for the pretreatment. So otherwise, these biological pretreatment are very attractive because of low cost and the recycling of the enzymes. For example, if we are using the enzymes, but the limitation is that the time duration required to pretreatment is very high. That should be reduced to make them very favorable. Yeah, so more about the biological pre-treatment. For example, I have taken a picture in which the fungi is being used to pre-treat the biomass. So just consider this is a biomass, for example, agro residue, the stubble from the agriculture field, and now you are treating it using the fungi. So fungi is a microorganism which usually grow in a filamentous. You all have seen the fungi, I believe, because when we store breads for a longer time, you can see that there is a green color mat on the bread and some other food items. So that is the fungi which grow on the different biodegradable compounds. So these biological organism or microorganism are very good in terms of production of extracellular enzyme. So these fungi will grow on the substrate. They will really release the enzyme, which are shown here with the symbol of a star. So these will release the enzyme, which are the extracellular enzyme. So these enzyme will act on the polymers which are present in the biomass and will solubilize it into smaller molecules. So this is how the biological pretreatment, for example, the fungi-based pretreatment works. Yeah. So related to this, there is a process when we are focusing on the ethanol production using the biomass. So there is a process known as saccharification or enzymatic hydrolysis. So which is basically a breakdown of the carbohydrate like cellulose and hemicellulose into glucose monomers using the enzyme. And these enzymes which are used in the saccharification are very specific. Usually all the enzymes are specific for their target sites, and the operational condition include the pH around 4.5 to 1 and temperature around 40 to 50 degrees centigrade based on the characteristics of the enzyme. And the yield of sugar in this case is very high. Up to 90% of theoretical sugar present in the biomass can be extracted, but there are some limitation because of the high purification cost and some the I took this slide because just to say that the enzymes are very specific for their target site. So there is a different models and hypothesis to explain the enzyme kinetics. So this is a lock and key model. As you know, for a particular lock, there is a specific key. Similar, the case is with the enzymes. For a specific enzyme, there is a specific substrate. Okay, for example, this is a substrate dimer of glucose, and this is the enzyme which is having the binding sites. So there is a complementary binding site on the enzyme. If there is a complementary site, the substrate will bind on the enzyme, otherwise it won't bind. Okay, so there is a lock and key model. For a particular type of substrate, there is a specific enzyme which will act on that, and it will be making a complex which will result in the breakdown of the polymer into monomers. For example, in this, the dimer has been broken down into glucose and fructose, and the enzyme will be free at the end of reaction. The enzyme will be free to recycle again and again. So this is the beauty of enzyme based pretreatment, that you can use the enzyme for multiple times. So this is related to the specificity. For example, in this case, we are talking about the cellulose breakdown, and there is an enzyme which is known as glucanase, endoglucanase, and exoglucanase. So these are acting as at a specific site to cut down the polymers. The main target site for the glucanase is the beta 1 for glycosidic bond. The one those are having some little background of the biochemistry might be able to understand. Otherwise, you can see that the polymers are the polymer in which the monomers are attached through some chemical bonding. So these are the special kind of bond, beta 1 for bond, which are found in the cellulose. So these enzymes will act on the different bond at different locations. They will break down in will be having a specific site of action and will break down into smaller monomers. The major problem in case of enzyme is the enzyme inhibition. So sometime the end product of the reaction or the any of the intermediate reaction component, if the concentration of that component is very high, it can create inhibition to the key enzyme into the pathway, and this inhibition is known as feedback inhibition. So this is the major problem in case of enzymes, because of the end, because sometimes the end product of the chemical reaction can hamper the activity of enzyme, and the process efficiency will be lower down. So for example, you can see this diagram in which the cellulose is being broken down into glucose, and there are different sites and the enzymes which can be broken down by the glucose. Higher or the excess concentration of glucose in the reaction vessel can block down the enzyme 3, enzyme 1, enzyme 1, etc. Similarly, the different other intermediate molecules can block the activity of the enzyme. This is the mainly limitation in the enzyme activity. Otherwise, the process is very efficient in terms of biomass solubilization. Related to the saccharification, there are few equations which you can consider, like there is a enzyme adsorption kinetics based on the Ligmier type isotope. Hello. Please mute yourself. Okay, so this is the equation which is used to study the enzyme adsorption on the substrate, because the enzyme will act on the substrate when it is absorbed to the substrate itself. Otherwise, if there is no interaction between the enzyme and the substrate, the enzyme reaction cannot be carried forward. And the saccharification rate can be calculated using the Monod equation, which is very popular equation. And all the symbols which have been used in this equation are listed here. Like A max is the maximum concentration of substrate which has been absorbed by the enzyme, and the concentration of E0 Okay, so after saccharification, the next step is the production of ethanol from the converted sugar. Initially, we have the biomass. So the process is like that. We have taken biomass and now we have converted into glucose. This is biomass macromolecule. Glucose. Now glucose has to be converted into ethanol. So ethanol, or sometimes people may say it's a bioethanol. Both are same. Chemically, it's a ethanol only because of its a biological origin. It's termed as bioethanol. So ethanol can be converted using the process which is known as fermentation. So actually a fermentation in case of ethanol production will be carried out under anaerobic condition, and you can see the stoichiometry. For 1 mole of glucose, there will be generation of 2 mole of ethanol and 2 mole of CO2. Okay, so this ethanol is having the fuel value. Okay, so this is the process by which the glucose, the usual substrate for the fermentation, is converted into methanol. And the fermentation can be classified into two classes, like mesophilic fermentation, which is mainly based on the C5 carbons sugar, and thermophilic the fermentation which can take both C5 and C6 sugars. And as I told you, in case of enzyme inhibition, there is a inhibition to the fermentation process, which is done by the final product, ethanol. Ethanol can inhibit the process, and that's why the yield is limited to 20 to 50% of the substrate bed. Because if the concentration of ethanol is very high in the reaction vessel, it may create some inhibition into the process. So main organism which is used in the fermentation of ethanol is the Saccharomyces cerevisiae, most commonly used, which is also known as the baker's yeast. And there are some bacteria which has been engineered to produce the ethanol utilizing the different sugars like C5 and C6 sugars, like E. coli and Zymomonas. So these are the bacteria which are having the inserted gene for conversion of glucose or some other carbon into ethanol. Okay, and this product inhibition is a major hurdle in the process, because in case of fermentation which is being done with the help of Saccharomyces cerevisiae, if the concentration of ethanol is 5% in the final reaction mixture, so it creates toxicity to the Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So 5% ethanol is toxic to the Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So that's why it's very difficult to produce the high amount of ethanol in batch mode. And if it is continuous mode, it should be ensured that the ethanol concentration should not exceed the 5% of the total volume. And this is a related slide in which it is shown that how the different macromolecule or the monomolecule or the sugar can be transported into the cell. So there are different proteins on the cell wall which are known as the transport protein, which will facilitate the transport of different substrate into the cell. Once entered into the cell, these sugar molecule can take part into the biochemical cycles. And please note, in a single cell, there are more than chemical reactions occurring at a time. So these biochemical pathways are very complex, and different molecules can be converted into end product, which is the ethanol in this particular case. And there is a branch of engineering which is known as metabolic engineering, which deals with the metabolic engineering of the pathways. So for example, you can block this pathway to accelerate the production of ethanol, or you can block these two pathways to an enzyme. And the metabolite which is being produced because of that particular pathway is essential for the growth of that particular microorganism. So that metabolite should be provided in the media. So this is a different branch of the engineering which is known as the metabolic engineering. So we should not talk more about that. So this is how the substrate is transported into the cell, and it enters to the metabolic pathway for the conversion of substrate into desired product. And the kinetics model which you can apply to the fermentation. For example, this is the equation which is used under the product inhibition, means the ethanol is inhibiting the process. In this case, you can use this model to study the process kinetics. Mu is equals to mu m s upon ks plus s into 1 minus p upon pm raised to power n, where the parameters are given here. N is the number of parameter, mu is the specific growth rate, Ks is the saturation constant, etc. And you can use this equation Qs is equal to mu m upon xys to calculate the specific glucose consumption rate Qs mu x, where this Ys is nothing but Yxys is actually production of biomass per unit substrate consumption. Okay, so this is Ys, yield coefficient of biomass. Similarly, you can calculate the specific ethanol production rate Qp, which is mu upon Yxyp. So this is the rate of biomass per unit product formation. So this is the biomass yield coefficient based on the product. Okay, so these are the equation and general overview of fermentation which is used for the ethanol production. This is the schematic diagram. So which is having different components like agitator, which is used to mix the media content properly and to enhance the contact between the microorganism present and the substrate added. And there is a requirement of heating and cooling water. And there are different props there to just to control. And usually these systems are auto control with the help of computer and the PID control. Okay, and this is the actual view of fermenter, lab scale fermenter, how it is visible. So it is having different ports for pH control, turbidity control, and cell concentration, etc. And this is the motor which is used to agitate the mixture. And finally, the product will be discharged from the one end. Yeah, so based on the strategy, the fermentation and saccharification has been classified into 4 classes. One is the separate saccharification and the fermentation, in which you are having 2 reactors. One is the saccharification reactor, and second one is the fermentation reactor. So who is talking? Please stop talking, or please mute. Hello. Okay, so one process is that in which saccharification is separated from the fermentation. Second, in which a single reactor is used for both the saccharification and fermentation. Third one is that in which there is a isothermal simultaneous saccharification and fermentation under the control condition. And this process is very advantageous because it provides optimal conditions for the enzymatic reaction as well as the microorganism which is converting glucose into ethanol. And the another one is the simultaneous saccharification and co-fermentation, in which both pentose as well as hexose sugar will be utilized in the saccharification stage itself for the production of ethanol. So these are the categories of the fermentation. Yeah, next process in the bioenergy generation is the anaerobic digestion, which is a very complex process. So I hope most of you will be knowing about the anaerobic digestion process. So this is a process by which you can convert any biodegradable compound into methane rich biogas. Biogas contain around 50 is present in the reactor, and the substrate, for example, in this particular case, banana biomass has been taken as a reference, or you can take any of the substrate like cow dung or the food waste or the kitchen waste as a substrate, which is usually go to a pretreatment stage, which is not prerequisite in most of the cases. For example, when we talk about the cattle dung, there is no need of pretreatment. But in some cases, like when you are using agro residue, pretreatment is required just to solubilize the biomass, and that slurries fade into the reactor, which is the anaerobic digester. And in the anaerobic digestion, there will be microorganism which will convert the biomass component into biogas. So there are 4 steps when we talk about the broader term. There are 4 stages in the anaerobic digestion process. First one is the hydrolysis. So this is the stage when which the macromolecules macromolecule, which are the larger in size, will be converted into smaller molecule or monomers. So these are the polymers which are now being hydrolyzed into monomers, smaller polymers or monomers like sugars and proteins. Okay, so this is the stage, first stage, hydrolysis. Second stage will be the acidogenesis, which will focus, which is actually the process in which most of the monomers will be converted into acids, or more correctly to the volatile fatty acids, VFAs, which includes C12, C6 carbon chain. The organic acids which are volatile in nature, having carbon C1 to C6, or more correctly C2 to C6. So these are the acids which will be produced mainly in the stage 2. Stage 3 is the acetate forming stage, which is known as the acidogenesis. In this particular stage, acidogenic bacteria will convert all the volatile fatty acids into acetic acid, because the acetic acid is the only acidic compound which can be taken by the next stage bacteria, which are the methanogens. So all the acids which form at the stage 2 will be converted into acetic acid, CO2 and hydrogen. And the methanogen in the stage 4 will take up these acetate as well as hydrogen and CO2 as substrate, and then finally convert these into methane and CO2. And as the process will run, there will be release of liquid portion or the solid portion. Gas will be taken up from the top of the reactor, and the liquid will be taken at the depth of the reactor, which is known as the digestate. So you will obtain the digestate and the biogas itself. Biogas will be having the fuel value, which can be conditioned again, can be enriched into bio CNG, and the liquid digestate can be processed into different components which are used as organic fertilizer in agriculture sector. So this process offers various advantages when we compare with other processes like ethanol fermentation, because there is almost no waste production, because all the components are being utilized. And when we talk about the biodiesel production, only lipid will be utilized. When we talk about the ethanol production, only glucose will be utilized, and rest of the amount of the biomass will be remain as the waste. But in case of the biogas production using anaerobic digestion, all the component of biomass can be digested into biogas, and the solid remaining will be used as a fertilizer. So this is the beauty of the process. Though the energy value of methane is lesser than the ethanol, etc., because of some limitation, but still the process offers several advantages when we compare with other biochemical routes. So this is the brief about the stoichiometry of anaerobic digestion, because it's a chemical reaction in which the biomass, which a chemical compound, is being converted into different molecules like methane and CO2. So for better understanding, we have taken some example of glucose, protein, and fats. So if we know the chemical composition of the particular compound, for example, glucose, we know, or the carbohydrate, if we know the chemical composition, we can predict the amount or the composition of biogas in terms of CO2 and methane. For example, if we are taking the glucose, so there will be there should be 50-50 ratio of methane and CO2 in the final biogas. So please note, this is a theoretical ratio. Because of some reason, the methane concentration may go up to 55 or 60%, or it may go up to 45 or 40%. So that will depend on the process condition. This is the theoretical value. Similarly, theoretically, for the protein, the ratio could be around 50 is to 45 for methane and CO2. And for fats and vegetables, the ratio is around 70 is to 30. So from this concept, we can say that the fats are having the high methane potential because of the higher concentration of methane in the final biogas, but the fats are very difficult to digest in the anaerobic condition. So that's why these cannot be considered as a good substrate. Similarly, when we talk about the proteins, so if there is a lots of protein in the substrate, this will release lots of nitrogen, because you can see there is a release of nitrogen, ammonia. So that may accumulate in the reactor itself and can create toxicity to the anaerobic microflora. And similarly, if there is a mostly carbohydrate, so these are very rapidly digested substrate. So in that case, there is a more accumulation of acidic compounds. So the pH will drop. So optimal pH for anaerobic digestion is around neutral, 7. So if it is lower than 7, it may create some problem. If it is higher than 7, which will be case of the protein utilization. So this will create lots of problem in the process condition. That's why the substrate which is being used for biogas production have balance having more stable anaerobic digestion process when we compare for the ID for the either of these three components. Yeah, so related to this, there are some kinetic equation which you should know. So like when we are planning to have a we should if we are planning to have a idea of biogas yield or biomethane yield, sometimes known as biomethane potential, BMP. So in that case, we will be using substrate, which is the feedstock, and we need inoculum. Inoculum is the microorganism, microbes which will run the process. So the case is similar to the curd making. You need milk and you need curd. The curd act as a seed culture and milk is a raw material. So you mix them two and under the optimal condition, you will make more curd. OK, same cases with this. You need the substrate and you need the inoculum. So inoculum is the seed culture. And usually if we take the digestate from the running biogas plant, that serve as a good inoculum source, because that particular the slurry of the digestion plant will be having adequate amount of microorganism to run the process. So that amount of the volume should be calculated using the equation. If you know different parameter like specific methanogenic activity of inoculum, there is a small protocol to do this. Volatile volatile suspended solids, which are actually the live cells in the inoculum. So using this equation, you can calculate the amount of volume which is required to carry out the BMP test, biochemical methane potential test. And usually the ratio of substrate to inoculum is vary from 1:1 to 1:5. Of biomethane potential of a given substrate, maybe cow dung or the food waste. So if you need some more detail about the BMP test, I can provide more detail over mail. OK, so because of the limited time, we'll discuss briefly here. And at the same time, when you are conducting the experiment with the biomass, you should have the experimental flask as well as the control flask, and the net biogas production can be estimated using this equation. V net is equals to B experimental minus B control. The control flask will be having the inoculum only without the substrate, and cumulative biogas production you can easily estimate by summing all the methane yield on daily basis. And these are the equation which you can use, the stoichiometric equation which you can use to predict the theoretical methane potential, the stoichiometric methane potential and the theoretical methane potential. If you know the elemental composition, you can use this equation to calculate the stoichiometric methane potential. Or if you know the biochemical composition, you can apply this equation: A into Cl plus B into Cp and C into Cc, where Cl, Cp and Cc are the percentage of total solid waste in terms of lipid, protein and carbohydrate, and A, B, C are the specific methane yield of lipid, protein and carbohydrate, the data for which is given. OK, so just knowing the biochemical composition of any given substrate, you can theoretically calculate the methane potential of that given biomass. So please note that will be the theoretical value, not the practical value. Similarly, if you know the elemental composition or the chemical formula for that given biomass, you can use this equation to calculate the theoretical stoichiometric methane potential. So these two will be the maximum methane potential of given substrate or biomass. OK, and there are two models which are very common to use when we are working on the biogas production using substrate. So Gompresch model and the logistic function model. So based on the laboratory data or the batch scale data, you can fit the data to compute the ultimate methane production rate of ultimate. This is the ultimate methane yield, the rate of production of biogas, and the lag in the process. So for example, if we plot the cumulative, for example, this is the biogas or biomethane, and this is time. OK, when you plot the when you plot the cumulative biogas production, you will get this kind of plot. So there is some lag which can be estimated in terms of lambda here, and slope of this will be the Rm. OK, so these equations are based on this particular graph, and using this equation, after feeding the data in this equation, you can calculate different parameters like Rm, lambda, the lag phase, and the ultimate methane production. OK, so these are the two common model which are used in the batch biogas production using substrate. Yeah, so we have talked about basic fundamental about ethanol production. different theories, but discuss all these here. So now I would like to talk on the algae, which are because the algae are emerging as a great feedstock for the biofuel production. If you search on the internet, you will find there are lots of research which is focused on the algal biofuel. And in the 2019, there was one first algal fueled vehicle which was launched in the San Francisco just as a test drive to use the algal based biofuel to run this the car. Similarly, in the Japan, the another attempt was made to run the bus on the algal based biofuel. And in recent year in 2020, sorry, in August 2020, there was a recent attempt on the utilization of microalgal derived biofuel in the flight. Uh, yeah, so this means they are trying to demonstrate the flights using the algal biofuel as a fuel in the engines. So there have been several other attempts which I could not list in this particular slide, but the algal biofuels are growing at a very fast rate, and I am sure that in near future we will be having more such wonderful example of use of algal biofuel. So when we talk about the algal biofuel, we should know basics about the algae. So you all have seen the algae in nearby area. For example, in the water bodies, fresh water body or wastewater body, all are having the algal growths. So for example, I have taken this picture from the Hotchkiss Lake because I have been working on that lake for last 5-6 years. So there has been huge growth of algae in that particular water. Similarly, in several region of the world, the water bodies are contaminated from the algal growth. So these algal are otherwise problematic can be used as a substrate for biofuel production. The major problem of the algal biomass is that they produce toxins which are toxic to the aquatic environment or the lives. So these are not desirable in the aquatic environments. So these can be harvested from the aquatic environment and can be converted into biofuel. So we have done some work in this regard. I'll show you that work after a few slides. So in general, when we talk about the algae, so these are miniature plant-like system. So these are based on the photosynthesis in which the substrate is CO2 and which is being converted into biomass with the help of sunlight. So simple principle of photosynthesis as applicable to plant is applicable to microalgae or the algae because they also do photosynthesis. They also take CO2 from the environment and the sunlight to run the chemical reaction for the conversion of CO2 into glucose, and the glucose can then be converted into different biomass components. And usually these algae can be considered as a biochemical factories because as I told you earlier, in a single small size cell, which is around 10 micrometer, there are more than 1,000 chemical reactions which are occurring. And at each and every chemical reaction, there will be different metabolites, which may serve as a precursor for different biomolecules or the biofuels. That's why these algae can be considered as a miniature biochemical factories. Apart from the biofuel, there are different other industrial application of the algal biomass like use as aquaculture feed, animal feed, biofertilizer, etc. And there are several metabolites which can be extracted from the algal biomass. At the same time, there are attempts to economical survival. Just to improve the economy of the process, there is a attempts to club the process of the algal metabolite production and the biofuel production. So there are various advantages of a microalgal fuel, like there is no competition like food and fuel. There is no need of agricultural land because these can be cultivated in non-agricultural land using the wastewater. And these are having very high photosynthetic activity when we compare the other plants. And the fuel value is also high when we talk about the algal biomass. But the main problem with the algal biomass is that they are having the complex cell wall. And all the metabolites which are of interest for the production of biofuel will lie in the cell itself. Either this in the cell or in the cell wall. So this cell wall is the major problem in the conversion of algal biomass into biofuel because it's a complex polymer which is made up of hemicellulose, cellulose, glycoprotein, etc. and sometimes it is very difficult to break down the cell wall just to extract the metabolite. For example, if we have the lipid bodies here, okay, so to convert these lipid body into biodiesel, so these should be extracted. For this, we have to rupture the cell wall. So this is the rigid cell wall, which is very problematic in the commercialization of algal biofuel. Okay. And the advantage of the algal biofuel is that you can club the algal cultivation with the wastewater treatment. And the advantage will be that at the same time you are treating the wastewater, you will get the safe water to discharge it into the environment, and you will generate the algal biomass, which can be converted into different biofuels. And the integration of algae with the wastewater treatment is basically based on the interaction between the algae and bacteria. And these two partner in the wastewater system interchange different molecules of nutrients, and there is a change of gases like CO2 and oxygen. Bacteria needs oxygen to degrade the organic compounds, whereas the algae needs CO2 to do the photosynthesis. So these grow together in the wastewater system and results in higher biomass growth and rapid reduction in the nutrient from the wastewater. So this is how the algae can be integrated with the wastewater. And in the recent years, there has been several attempts on the integration of algal system with the wastewater treatment, particularly using the algal and bacterial composition. Yeah, so once you have cultivated the algal biomass, you should do the composition analysis like ultimate analysis, which is the determination of elemental composition, and the proximate analysis, which is basically focused on the chemical and biochemical composition analysis. So the elemental composition analysis will give you the data on element present like carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, sulfur, etc. And the proximate analysis will give you the data on the biochemical composition as well as the volatile solids present, the ash present, and the moisture present, etc. and the micronutrient which are present in that particular biomass. So these two methods, ultimate and proximate analysis, are fundamental, and you can apply these methods to any kind of substrate. Okay, so these are not limited to algal biomass, but I have taken an example of algal biomass, but any kind of biomass or waste material can be processed using these protocols to determine the elemental composition as well as the biochemical composition. For example, I have shown you the data on the elemental composition like carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur of different algal biomass. And based on the carbon and nitrogen, there is a ratio which is very useful in terms of anaerobic digestion, CYN ratio. So you can see there is a varying value because all the different type of algae will be having different biomass composition. That's why they will be having different elemental composition, and the CYN ratio will be different. Similarly, you can see the biochemical composition is different for different algal biomass, protein, lipid, and carbohydrate, and the volatile solids percent is also varying in different algae. Also, the process condition will also affect the composition of the algal biomass. For example, if you are cultivating the algae in standard nutrient media, you will get some kind of composition. And when you are cultivating the same algal biomass in a different wastewater treatment, so the composition may be different. Okay, so there are different aspects which we should consider with respect to the composition, because the process condition will affect the accumulation of different kind of metabolites or the molecule in the algal biomass. And the overall process is that selection of algal strain based on the type of wastewater, for example, cultivation system, harvesting and extraction, processing, and the biofuel production. So I talk about briefly, for example, bioethanol, carbohydrate, lipid for biodiesel, residual biomass for biogas production, and the total biomass can also be used for biogas production. And the algal, these can be cultivated under phototropic conditions or can be cultivated under heterotrophic. Major differences in these two is that in photoautotrophic there is the CO2 which is serving as a carbon source, but in heterotrophic, apart from CO2, we may have to supplement the carbon, organic carbon, as a carbon source. So there are different models like open bond, close PVR, etc., which are used to cultivation of the algae. And these are some related literature related to the phototropic, heterotropic, and photoheterotropic modes and mixotropic modes of the algal cultivation required of carbon source. And like inorganic carbon or organic carbon is required. Okay, and we are recently working on the use of glucose, glycerol, and acetate. We are supplementing these in the phototropic algal cultivation system just to see how the metabolism is shifting from the phototropic to heterotrophic system. So this is the ongoing research in our lab, and we are also working on different wastewater which are rich in organic carbon to use as a media for algal cultivation. The major cost of the algal production is the media requirement. That's why the major focus is on the utilization of wastewater as a alternate growth media. So these are the cultivation system, the open raceway pond, tubular photobioreactor, flat film photobioreactor, biofilm systems. There are different kind of modules, and I can say that there is an number of photobioreactor design which can be used for algae cultivation based on the requirements. Okay, so these are the systems which we have developed in our lab. We started with the flask of 100 ml and we have scaled up it to 200 raspberry ponds, which are of portable type. And similarly, we are also working on the development of attached growth system in which biofilm are growing on a solid support. So these inset picture is showing the small setup and the large system is here. So these systems are again portable type, and the liquid media is flowing on the solid support, and the algae are growing on that solid surface. And we are also working on a novel PBR design in which we are hybrid. We are using the hybrid system, and for that we have filed a provisional patent. And these are some advantage and disadvantage and the requirement of the open pond system, photobioreactor and hybrid system. So in general, when we talk about the algae cultivation, you can go for the open pond system, you can go for the closed photobioreactor system, and you can go for the hybrid system in which we are using the solid support as well as the closed system, and sometimes the open system in combination. So these are the hybrid system. And a little bit more about the biofilm system because I have worked on this system, so I know relatively much about this biofilm system. So this biofilm system, the major advantage of the biofilm system is that harvesting problem is easily solved. You have to just stop the flow, and you can harvest the biomass just by through mechanical scrapping. And we have tested this system with the wastewater itself, and we have seen that there is a huge removal of nutrients from the wastewater, and the treated water from the algal biofilm system was at par with the standard which are used to discharge to the wastewater into the environment. These are some equations which you can use for calculating the volume. Like for tubular PBR, there is some equations. When you are focusing on the modeling particular process in a tubular reactor, you should use these kind of equation. For bubble column reactor, there are different equations. Similarly, there are equation for flat plate PVR, and there are few equations which I have not listed here for biofilm system, which can use when you are using to model. You are focusing on the modeling of a particular PVR system for algae cultivation. And as in case of any biomass, the algal biomass should be pre-treated before its conversion to biofuel. So there are different methods like mechanical method, osmotic shock, bed mill, enzymatic method, ultrasound assisted method, microwave assisted method for algal biomass pre-treatment. And I have shown here the which is the most common carbon dioxide extraction method. So this is a very efficient method in terms of recovery of lipids and various metabolites, but the cost of the instrument as well as the processing cost is very high. So this is under development stage, and I hope in near future the researcher will be able to reduce the cost of the setup. And these two are promising method like microwave assisted extraction and the enzymatic extraction. So you can say these are the extraction method or the pre-treatment method. So the main aim is to degrade the cell wall just to improve the accessibility of the metabolites which are present in the algal biomass. Okay, so we are working on these two methods, microwave assisted and enzymatic method, and we are also working on the combination of these two, microwave assisted and enzymatic method. So these are two very attractive methods which will be developed in near future by different researchers. Okay, so the major problem, as I talked earlier about the algal production, is that algal biofuel is that the harvesting. In the usual practice, the algae is cultivated in suspended mode, like in PVR or raspberry ponds. So harvesting of algae is very difficult, and the cell wall is very rigid. The second problem is the cell wall, which is very rigid. And I have taken some picture from the anaerobic digestion setup after 45 days. So you can imagine that how difficult is to digest the algal cell wall, because the sample which was taken after 45 days of anaerobic digestion was having the live cells in the digest state. So this is the reason the algal cell wall is very rigid, and it's difficult to completely convert the algal biomass into biofuel, for example, into biogas. So with respect to the algal biomass separation from the suspended culture, these systems or the recipe ponds. So there is a attractive work which has been done in case of bioharvesting, in which you can use algae to harvest the algae, you can use the bacteria to harvest the algae, or you can use the fungi to harvest the algae. So algae are of two types. One is the suspended algae, which are unicellular, means each cell will be growing independently, and there are algae which grow in clumps or may grow in filaments. So if you cultivate these algae with these unicellular algae, so these unicellular algae may also go with the algal clumps and may be harvested easily. So this is one strategy. Sometimes the bacteria can be clubbed with the algae, and bacteria can form a flock with the algal biomass. OK, and that can be settled down. So this is another method. And the fungi based method is based on the fungi. For example, we have the algae, and the fungus are grown as filaments. So they will be having the filaments, and algae can be clubbed on the surface of the filament. So this will make a flock which can be settled down easily. OK, so these are the three major methods which are using under bioharvesting. I am talking it as bioharvesting because these methods of algal biomass harvesting are based on the biological components like bacteria, algae, or fungi. So in the recent years, we have done very interesting work in the particular sector of the fungi waste harvesting. So this is the reactor setup, and this reactor was having the algae grown for 12 days, and we added some pre-grown fungi in the reactor here, and within 6 hours, all the algae was separated from the reactor vessel. Or this take around 6 hours. This took around 6 hours to complete the process. So process is very efficient, and we could completely harvest the algal biomass from any kind of suspended system. Now we have tested it for the raspberry ponds, and we are also trying this technology to be implemented for purification of the water bodies like lake and ponds to separate the algal biomass. So this process is very efficient, and we have worked in more depth, and we have reduced this time period to 3 hours. In 3 hours, we are able to achieve around 80 or 90% efficiency, harvesting efficiency. So this is one aspect, and I'll show some more pictures related to this later on if you need. I can forward some more pictures. OK. And the second aspect was based on the algal biomass pretreatment. Again, I have worked on the enzymatic based pretreatment, and in which we use two fungal enzyme, and you can see this AL1, RO1, AL2, RO2. So 1 and 2 are the percentage of enzyme concentration. 10% for 1, 2 is for 20%. And AL is Aspergillus lentulus, RO is Rhizopus oryzae. So based on this finding, I came across with the conclusion that enzyme Aspergillus are efficient in microscope. So the cells were stained with the cytoxine, which stained the cells which are having the ruptured cell wall. So these are the data which are shown here, just to give you some idea that how you can conduct some experiment based on the enzymatic pretreatment and how you can quantify your results. And because of this pretreatment, the methane yield from the algal biomass was significantly improved. You can see the methane yield from the fresh biomass was around 250 ml per gram of volatile solids, and which was improved up to 300 ml per gram of volatile solids with the enzymatic pretreatment. And in the second attempt, the fungi was used to harvest the algal biomass. So that harvested biomass was then incubated under controlled conditions, and biogas production was studied from that. and it was identified that the biomass which was stored for 3 days, the algal biomass with the fungi which was stored for 3 days was having the highest methane production. So methane production was improved around 250 for the control to around 380 for the pre-treated biomass. So this is just an idea that how the pre-treatment of enzyme based technology work on the algal biomass fuel value improvements, and you can improve the extraction of biofuel production from the algal biomass. So this is a one simple case which is based on the biogas production. Similarly, there have been several attempts by different researchers on the production of biodiesel, bioethanol, biohydrogen from the algal biomass. And obviously, there have been development in terms of thermal as well as chemical and physicochemical pre-treatment of algal biomass. So in this particular lecture, I was focused mainly on the biochemical routes of conversion of biomass into biofuel, biochemical routes of harvesting of biomass, biochemical routes of conversion of biomass into biofuel, and pre-treatment of biomass. Okay. So this is I promise, as I promise, I'll show you some slides related to the work which we have carried out on the Hodgkins Lake. So this is the work which was carried out by one of my PhD scholar at IIT Delhi. So he conducted some research in which he harvested the algal biomass from the Hodgkins Lake, and he cultivated that algae in the wastewater collected from the IIT drain in the Raceway Pond, and we utilize both the biomass, the grown in the wastewater in the lab itself, and the treated water was discharged, and the biomass was harvested from this setup, as well as the biomass which was collected from the Hodgkins Lake was taken into anaerobic digester and mixed with the cattle dung into 1:1 ratio, which we optimized based on our research finding, and we monitored the biogas production for a period of more than 1 year. And we found that the process of algal co-digestion with the cattle dung is feasible, and we got significant improvement in the process during this experiment. So this is the one slide which I was interested to share with you, just to show that we are not limited to the lab scale work, and we have done some work in the pilot scale itself. Now we are planning to link this algal technology with the family type biogas plants. Okay, that's all references, and thank you very much. If you have any query, you can ask. Professor Ridham? Yes, anyone having any query related to the text which I share?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for your nice presentation. I would like to know the significance of C by N ratio in the substrate regarding biogas factor, one thing. And another one is regarding you mentioning about the co-digestion of microalgae and cow dung. So what is the percentage of methane in that actually in the biogas you obtained? And how about the other trace gases like hydrogen sulfide or any other mercaptans, anything is there? So I would like to know position of
very crucial when we talk about the anaerobic digestion, because the anaerobic digestion process is based on the microbes, and there is an optimal range of C by N ratio which is favorable for the microbes, which is in the range of 20 to 30. So if the ratio is in between the 20 to 30, or sometime in some cases if it is in the range of 10 to 20, that is considered at optimal. And this C1 ratio should be balanced, because if there is a C1 ratio disbalance, for example, if the C1 ratio is exceeding the value of 30, in that case, you can see that the carbon is increasing. So there may be limitation of nitrogen to the microbes which are actually running the process. Okay. And if the C/N ratio is very high, in that case, the nitrogen may be accumulated in the system, which will create toxicity to the microflora which is actually running the process. So this is one factor. Secondly, when we are using the carbon to nitrogen ratio which is in the optimal range, in that case, obviously the methane production improves because of the improved activity of the methanogenic bacteria. Because of the favorable C/N ratio, the activity of methanogenic bacteria will be high, and there will be more conversion of the acetate and CO2 etc. into methane. So obviously the composition of the biogas will improve in terms of methane percentage, and that we have validated with the experiments. So we have seen that when we done the experiment with the algal biomass itself, the methane product percentage was around 52%, and when we did it with the co-digestion with the cow dung, and the C/N ratio was around 15 or 16. In that case, the methane concentration was around 58 to 60%. So this is how the C/N ratio can also affect this the final methane production in the biogas. And the next query was related to co-digestion. Am I right, Mr. Plani?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, co-digestion is required. The main reason of the co-digestion is that we need to optimize the C/N ratio. So co-digestion is directly related to the C/N ratio. So mainly the substrate which are having the high nitrogen ratio, high nitrogen content means they having lower C/N ratio, usually less than 10 or 5. In that case, you have to add some substrate which are having the high C/N ratio just to balance the C/N ratio. And in the particular case, when you are using the cattle tank as a co-substrate, so there is an added advantage because cattle tank contains some inorganic bacteria which will help in the anaerobic digestion in the reactor itself. So this is the added advantage.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, any further query?
One second, I didn't get the person. Is there any increase in percentage of hydrogen sulfide or other trace gases in case of
Hydrogen sulfide? Yeah, exactly. When we use algae, there is a slight increase in hydrogen sulfide because algae also contain sulfate in their biomass. So for that, we are working on to develop a reactor. So for example, the algae can be used in a reactor because algae needs sulfur. So what we can do, we can pass the biogas from the algal reactor. That will surely remove the hydrogen sulfide from the biogas. So there is a little research carried out in this particular topic by some other researchers, and we are also working on that. So that can be done. So obviously, when we are using algal biomass, there are chances that hydrogen sulfide will be there in the biogas.
Thank you.
Okay, so you all are welcome to drop me a mail if you need some further details for related to any topic to bioenergy. So I will be happy to assist you in any kind of work related to your research, or you want to need some more knowledge. So I will be happy to help you in all the regards. So I'll request Professor Rhythm to share the slides with you all so that you can read and so that you can list the queries and you can contact me anytime. So I have given my email ID in the PPT itself. So it will be good if you can write something. You can write your experience during our interaction. So though it was not physical interaction, so most of the time I was only talking, so I could not interact all of you. So the another way could be you can drop me a mail with your query and I will be happy to address it individually. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Nice. Thank you, sir.
Professor Rhythm.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sanjeev, for this wonderful session and very, very informative and useful, I think, for all the participants. And also, please, you can email these slides to me so that I can share with the participants.
Yeah, I will definitely email it to you, and I'll request that you please share these slides with all the participants.
Sure. We will do that today itself. Yeah, very true.
Okay. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Rhythmji.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Hello.
Yes, madam.